The quiet hum of the air conditioner barely covers the rustle of papers on your desk. You squint at the screen. Rows of genetic markers, mitochondrial codes, Y chromosome haplogroups. Not exactly bedtime reading. Unless, of course, you're the kind of person who falls asleep thinking about ancestry, tests, and world history. Tonight, you're deep in something strange, something unexpected. A recent genetic study on several Indonesian tribes, Bugis, Banjar, Aceh, even Javanese coastal families, has turned up a peculiar finding. A thread, no, a fingerprint, a whisper from across the Indian Ocean. DNA. Sequences that don't quite belong here, or rather, that weren't expected to be here. Arabian DNA. It's not a small statistical blip. It's significant. Significant enough to startle the researchers, who had come looking for migration patterns from mainland Asia, and stumbled instead into a genetic breadcrumb, trail stretching all the way to the sands of Hadramaut, the markets of Mecca, and the ports of Oman. You lean back, staring at the ceiling. How? You remember high school history class, right? The boring version. The one that said Islam came to Indonesia in the 13th century through traders, then slowly spread via the Wali Songo, with not much detail beyond a few heroic names on school posters. But if this DNA is accurate, and DNA rarely lies, it suggests something much older, much deeper. Historians still argue whether the Islamic presence in Indonesia truly began in the 1200s as textbooks claim, or whether quiet, undocumented Muslim communities had existed here centuries earlier, long before the rise of formal sultanates. You glance back at the data set. Certain haplogroups, especially the J1 lineage, are heavily associated with Arabian populations, particularly the tribes of Yemen and the Hijaz, and yet, here it is, populating not only Aceh, where you might expect it due to its title as the Veranda of Mecca, but also buried deep within inland tribes. People who don't even speak Arabic today yet carry it quietly, in their cells. It gets weirder. Mitochondrial DNA, passed down from mothers, is less prevalent in this Arab line. But the Y chromosome, passed father to son, is dominant, a clear signal of Arab male ancestors marrying local Indonesian women. The image forms clearly in your mind. A Hadrami merchant, barefoot on the white sands of Sumatra, unloading fragrant spices and porcelain, his ship bobbing gently behind him. He speaks a mixture of Arabic, Persian, and halting Malay. A curious crowd gathers. He smiles, trades goods, perhaps stays, marries, plants roots. And with him comes something else, something invisible but powerful. La ilaha illallah. Not shouted, not forced, but whispered, shared over dinner, echoed in quiet prayer. You chuckle softly. It's kind of poetic, isn't it? Faith traveling not at the tip of the sword, but in the quiet folding of family, of marriage, of trust. Yet until now, no one had the genetic proof. The oral histories were dismissed, the family stories treated like quaint myths. But now, the blood tells the truth. You scroll further through the research paper. Certain regions stand out. South Sulawesi shows an unusual concentration. The Bugis and Makassaris, famed sailors of the archipelago, have a genetic footprint that links, astonishingly, back to Oman and Yemen. Not just culturally, not just linguistically, biologically. Historians debate whether this was purely trade-driven, or if early Dawah, Islamic outreach missions accompanied these merchants. Some even argue whether the earliest mosques in Indonesia, simple wooden structures with thatched roofs, were quietly built before any official sultanate existed. No stone inscriptions, no grand declarations, just humble spaces for sujud under the open sky. You imagine it now. A moonlit beach. A small group gathers on the sand. No minarets, no domes, just men and women bowing, whispering verses in languages that blend seamlessly into the wind. Part Arabic, part Malay, part something else entirely. You lean back, arms crossed. DNA doesn't lie, you mutter. And if DNA doesn't lie, then neither did the grandmothers who swore. Our great-great-grandfather came from Arabia. Maybe they were right all along. The clock ticks softly. Midnight now. But sleep feels like a distant concept. You rub your face, exhale slowly. Okay, you whisper to yourself. How deep does this go? Your cursor blinks on the screen almost impatiently, as if it's daring you to keep going. And of course you do. Because if the Arab lineage in Indonesian tribes is real, and the DNA suggests it is, then the next question practically screams at you. How did it get there? The answer starts, as it so often does in world history, with trade. Picture it. The 7th century. The Islamic world is expanding, not through armies in this case, but through something far more seductive: commerce. Aromatic spices, glistening pearls, silk, ceramics, and precious gems move through ocean, routes as if the sea itself is a conveyor. Belt connecting civilizations, and right at the heart of this web, the Indian Ocean. On one side, Arabia, on the other, the vast archipelago we now call Indonesia. A string of emerald islands floating on blue, ripe with cloves, nutmeg, sandalwood, and things so valuable that they could bankrupt kings and launch empires. You imagine it now, an Omani dhow slicing through the water, its triangular sails full of wind. On board, dark-skinned Arab sailors, seasoned by sun and salt, swap jokes in Arabic as they chart a course towards the Spice Islands. Somewhere in the hull, sacks of dates sit next to prayer rugs, and a rolled-up Quran lies wrapped in cloth, waiting. Historians still argue whether these traders were merely opportunistic merchants or whether some were, quite literally, the earliest Muslim missionaries in Southeast Asia. The line between trader and teacher was blurry back then. If you spent 6 months in a foreign port, marrying a local woman, raising children, teaching your faith, were you still just a merchant, or were you something more? Your fingers tap nervously. A second window opens, an old maritime map from the 10th century. Dotted lines weave from Muscat to Gujarat, then east to Sumatra, Java, and further to Malacca and the Philippines. The journey wasn't just possible, it was common. The more you look, the clearer it becomes. Indonesia was not some forgotten outpost. It was the glittering jewel at the far end of the Spice Highway. And the Arabs knew it. Oh, they knew. In fact, you stumble upon records from Chinese imperial archives dating back to the Tang dynasty. They speak of Arab ships frequenting the ports of Srivijaya, a powerful maritime kingdom in Sumatra, as early as the 8th century. That's not just trade. That's presence, a footprint. And here's the kicker. Srivijaya was a Buddhist kingdom. Yet, archaeological digs near old port cities reveal gravestones with Arabic inscriptions, dated centuries earlier than Indonesia's official Islamic history. Quiet, lonely markers in forgotten cemeteries. Whispers of men who came, traded, prayed, and sometimes never left. You chuckle under your breath. The idea that Islam came late to Indonesia? It's starting to look like a polite lie told by textbook publishers, who just didn't want to deal with the messiness of earlier narratives. Then something else pops up, a genetic anomaly from a small tribe in eastern Sumatra. Their Y-DNA haplogroup doesn't match nearby Southeast Asian populations. Instead, it links directly to coastal Yemen. The odds of this being random? Basically zero. So, you murmur, they were here. Not just passing through, not just visitors. A mental image forms, an Arab merchant standing at the docks in Aceh. Perhaps in the 9th century, his beard trimmed, his robe flowing. He greets the locals not just with trade offers, but with Assalamu alaikum. Maybe a little broken in pronunciation, but sincere. And the locals, they weren't fools. They saw the wealth, the ethics, the strange, profound way these men washed before praying, faced a direction unknown to them, and lowered their heads to the ground 5 times a day. It wasn't just business, it was compelling. Historians still debate whether these early Arab visitors intended to convert anyone at all. Some suggest conversion was incidental, a byproduct of marriage, of friendship, of shared meals under lantern-lit skies. Others argue there was a deliberate effort, especially by Yemeni traders known for their role in spreading Islam across East Africa and India. But the DNA doesn't care about intentions. It just sits there, silent, permanent, proof that whatever happened, it happened deeply enough to pass through generations. You sip water, stare at the blinking cursor again. You're starting to realize something. This isn't just history. This isn't just genetics. This is a family tree. One that stretches from Mecca to Maluku, from Hadramaut to Java, from the sands of Arabia to the rice paddies of Sumatra. A family tree planted by wind, waves, and whispered words of La ilaha illallah. And something tells you, this story is only getting started. You take a deep breath, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Because the further you dive, the more surreal this becomes. It's as if every new tab you open unravels another thread, pulling you deeper into a tapestry of history you were never taught. If trade was the bridge, then it's time to meet the people who walked across it. Sailors, merchants, clerics, scholars, and sometimes fugitives. You scroll through the records again, zeroing in on a specific group, the Hadrami Arabs. Ah, yes, the Hadramas, those sea-loving traders from the dusty cliffs of southern Yemen. If the Arab world had a population most likely to pack their things, kiss their mothers goodbye, and sail to the literal edge of the map, it was them. And guess what? Their fingerprints, both literal and genetic, are all over the Indonesian archipelago. Historians still argue whether the Hadramis were merely seeking wealth or escaping internal tribal conflicts, drought, or the relentless march of empires. Some say it was the pursuit of baraka, spiritual blessings tied to spreading Islam to distant lands. Others suggest they simply had an addiction to open water and the glitter of foreign markets. You imagine one now. Let's call him Abdullah bin Salim. He's standing on the deck of his dhow, the warm Indian Ocean breeze whipping his turban. Behind him, the rugged mountains of Hadramaut shrink into the horizon. Ahead, the lush green unknown of Sumatra, Java, and beyond. In his mind, it's not just a trade mission. It's a possibility, maybe a new home. Records from the 9th and 10th centuries speak of Arab enclaves springing up in ports like Barus, Aceh, and even far-flung places like Ternate and Tidore. These weren't tourist stops. These were settlements, communities, some temporary, many permanent. The DNA data doesn't just confirm it, it practically shouts it. By chromosome markers typical of the Hadrami and Hijazi, tribes show up in Acehese royal lineages, in Minangkabau merchant families, and even in remote Javanese coastal clans that had no written record of Arab ancestry. Until now. Even more surprising is that these weren't singular events. This wasn't a case of one shipwrecked trader marrying a local woman and calling it a day. No, this was generational, wave after wave. Fathers teaching sons how to navigate the stars, how to pray facing west, toward Mecca, and how to balance. Trade ledgers written half in Arabic, half in Sanskrit. You chuckle softly. Somewhere in Java, a Hadrami kid probably learned to haggle in 3 languages before he learned to tie his shoes. But it wasn't just the men. While the Y chromosome evidence dominates the story, tracing father to son, there's also a subtle but fascinating maternal footprint. It's smaller, but it's there. A few mitochondrial DNA sequences show Middle Eastern origins, suggesting that some Arab women, perhaps the wives or daughters of traders, also made the journey. Rare as it was, this little detail opens up a huge scholarly debate. Did Arab families migrate as entire units, or was it primarily the men who traveled, married locals and left descendants? You lean toward the latter. The numbers back it up. It mirrors similar patterns seen in East Africa, India, and even southern China. Arab men integrating into local societies, creating syncretic communities that were both Arab and fully local. The cultural fusion wasn't subtle either. Language began to warp in delightful ways. Arabic loanwords seeped into Old Malay. Words like kitab, book, hikmah, wisdom, zakat, charity, and masjid, mosque, became part of everyday speech. And not just religious terms, trade, law, navigation, and food all absorbed this linguistic DNA. You picture a market in 12th century Sumatra. A Hadrami trader counts coins, gold dinars from the Abbasid Caliphate, while a local buyer responds in a mix of Malay and Arabic. A goat bleats somewhere. Children yell. The adzan calls from a wooden mosque near the port. Nobody blinks at the cultural blend. It's normal. But perhaps the most surprising discovery isn't genetic or linguistic. It's architectural. You scroll through photos of old mosques in Java and Sumatra. Notice the tiered roofs, multi-level like pagodas. At first glance, they scream local, but look closer. The floor plans follow strict Islamic principles. The direction of Qibla, the absence of idols, the use of Arabic calligraphy carved into wood. It's Islam expressed through Nusantara hands, built with coconut wood and palm thatch instead of marble and sandstone. Historians still debate whether this architectural fusion was intentional, an effort to blend in, or simply the natural result of locals adopting Islam while retaining aesthetic traditions. Either way, it worked. The DNA, the mosques, the language, the rituals, they all whisper the same story. Arabs didn't just visit Indonesia. They stayed. They loved. They married. They prayed. And they became part of the family. And judging by your blinking cursor, the story isn't done telling itself yet.